What's up guys, AJ here. Got a whole stack of brand new 2022 PSE Evo XFs that we're going to be building up for the recipients of the class of Noden's Outdoors this year. For those of you that aren't familiar, Noden's is a veterans charity that takes transitioning out special operations vets that are looking to take their skills and apply them to bow hunting for the first time. So we're getting them hooked up with brand new PSE XF30s, Spot Hog sights, Fast Steady XLs, AE drop away rest, Quattro stabilizers, Easton, the new bow trucks bow cases, FMJ Legend arrows, and the Spot Hog Wise Guy release. So today's video is going to be a walkthrough setting up the bows from box to bow range, and as we're going through setting up these bows, I'll go over some of the features of the XF30. I've already set up 4 or 5 of these bows already. You can see 2 of the recipient bows behind me right now, and then I'm actually waiting on a couple of parts for my personal XF30, which will be a separate review video, so subscribe if you haven't already. So let's get to building these bows. Alright, so one of the things I had all of the recipients do is I sent them a video. It was actually John Dudley's knock-on, I believe it was his 101 video from a couple years back. I had them all measure their draw lengths and send that to me, along with the distance from the corner of their mouth to the middle of their eye, so I could get a rough estimate for where their peep is. So this recipient that I'm setting up right now, I wrote all their draw lengths down on these boxes, is a 28-inch draw. So first thing I'm going to do out of the box is I'm going to set these brand new E2 cams to 28 inches, which is super simple, and I'll walk you guys through that right now. Adjusting the draw length on these E2 cams is just like the Evolve cams before it. So there's 2 screws on either cam if you want to come in closer. So what I'm going to do is just loosen up those 2 screws right here with my Torx wrench, and then there's a little peg. These letters correspond to a different draw length. These bows go down to 27.5 inches, so I'm actually just going to move this to the H position on both cams and we'll be good to go for draw length. Alright, so we adjusted draw length. Now I'm actually going to adjust the let off. In my Levitate review, I talked about how these new E2 cams are a little bit more aggressive feeling than the Evolve cams before it. So I found that at 90% let off, which is what I used to have all of my Evolve cams set at, there's a bit more of a steep hump right before you get down into the valley, and then it's super locked out. But especially on these 30-inch axle-to-axle bows, you almost feel like you have to push forward a little bit to get the bow to let down, which for new archers is just a little bit more than I want them to deal with. 80% on the other end of the spectrum is a little bit more aggressive. You get a shorter valley, super smooth, but the valley is a little short. 85% I found on these XF30s with the E2 cams is really that sweet spot. Super smooth draw all the way through the draw cycle, no hump, nice comfortable valley. So that's where I'm going to start these guys out at. And adjusting the let off on here is just as easy as adjusting the draw length. So there's just a little module right there. I'm going to loosen up that screw, move it to that middle position. There's 3 set positions in there, and that's going to be your 85% let off. One thing I forgot to mention, again, these are going to be first-time archers, so these bows, we ordered them in 60 to 70 pounds, so I'm going to take, actually, they come fully tightened down from the factory, so I'm actually going to take out 10 turns. You don't have to zoom in. Camera lady's going rogue. So I'm going to actually take 10 turns out of the limb bolts. That'll give me anywhere from 10 to 15 pounds of let off, so I'll actually bring it down to about 55 pounds, which will be perfect for these guys. I mean, they're super in shape guys, but want to make sure that they're comfortably pulling the bows back for the first time, because it is an awkward thing for new shooters. So we're gonna just, I'm just gonna back out each limb, 10 turns, and then we'll get to setting up accessories. Okay, so I've got my accessories out of the box. I'm going to prep them for putting onto the bow. So I'm setting up these are Spot Hog Fast Steady XL 3 pins. So the way I set these up is first they come with this little bracket right here. That's your dead stop for adjusting the elevation. Some guys use these for kind of more of a hunting setup where they will actually put them on the bottom to prevent the wheel from going past their 20. I actually like to use these as a clearance dead stop, so I actually put it on the top for my maximum yardage, so I know where I can't dial this in anymore for when I'm shooting out to. Usually I can get out to like 100, 110 with these, so I like to have this all the way up there. So in order to do that, I'm actually going to remove and swap this little screw that is on there that just keeps the wheel from getting removed. I'm actually just going to put this right on the other side. Right, you can stop. Then I'm just going to slide the little bracket on there, and I'm just going to hand tighten it just for now because obviously we're not sighting the thing in right now. Okay, so now I'm going to mount this bracket to my riser. So PSE gives you different mounting positions. I like to start with it in the lowest position. That way I'm bringing my mass weight as close to my hand as possible. Alright, next we're going to set up these AAE Pro Drops. I'm actually going to use some D-loop material. So I actually removed this completely, and you guys will see why in a minute when we set up the rest more. But right now, out of the box, this rest comes set up for top limb activation. These are limb activated rests. I'm going to set these up for bottom limb activation, which is super easy. Just remove this screw right here. So we're going to relocate that. Don't lose that guy. You're going to need it. And we're going to remove this screw right here. There's a washer on here, so make sure you keep that. And when you take this arm off, there's two holes you'll see at two locations there that correspond to where they go in on the spring. So it comes with that one, that's the top limb activated one. I'm going to move it to just the other hole, is harder when you're trying to show the camera, and then just put it right back on there. And then I'm going to put my screw with the washer on there, and then I just want to rotate this just a little bit. The hole that I'm going to put that set screw in should line up with the flat spot on the launcher axle. So I can actually see into that hole that there is a marking from where this screw was before. And then I know from having set up these rests on a couple of bows already that the launcher blade is going to have to be moved over a little bit. So I'm going to just move it over a couple positions. Should be right about there. And tighten that down. These are micro adjust, and I like to actually move the launcher blade itself versus this just because it keeps everything nice and clean over here. So real easy. I'm just going to loosen up these two screws and just slide this over just a little bit, which serves two purposes. I don't have a whole bunch of the axle sticking out, and it makes it so that I don't have to adjust the entire rest over as much. So mounting on the bow is pretty simple. I'm just going to put it on there. PSE gives you 2 burger buttonholes, so I don't have 2 screws. You don't need it, but if you want to have that added security, you can just pick up another screw from your local hardware store. I'm just going to use that second burger buttonhole to line up the rest, and I just have it right up against the riser. And then I'm just, once I have the that screw tightened up just a little bit, I'm going to then tighten up that tension screw right there just enough to lift it off slightly. Check function. That looks good to go. One thing I like to do is these AE Pro Drop rests come with this little shelf to go on your rest shelf for your arrow. So this is actually a bit bigger than most rest shelves. So what I'm actually going to do is there are these ridges on here. So I'm actually going to cut this off. I'm going to just measure the length of the limb, and I'm going to actually use this to keep my rest cord in place for my cable rest. And I'll show you guys that right now. So I'm literally just going to take this, put it against the limb, and you just
I got B-roll.
Alright, so I'm just going to take my little section of rest shelf and I'm going to just put it right on the end of the F and the XF. That's the perfect spot for it right there. Just going to make sure it's nice and secure, and we can tie in a tentative rest line. So for rest line, I'm just using number 24 BCY D-loop material. So I'm just going to cut it roughly the length of my arm. Okay, so how I tie in my rest cord is I actually don't use the little brackets or anything like that. So I just tie in with basically the same kind of knot they use for a D-loop on the bottom around the limb. And then coming up here, I just run the cord through the rest, and then I actually use a Protekt knot just like you have on the safety line of your tree stands. The reason I like using that instead of little brackets is when I'm tuning, or if I'm in the field and there's weather changes, the string shrinks or stretches or what have you, it's easily adjustable. Just push up to get rid of the tension on the rest, and then pull back down to add tension to the rest. So just push up, pull down. No tools needed. I can easily adjust that in the field. Super simple. Alright, so I'm just dropping in my peep for right now as a placeholder. We'll move it later. I have his eye measurement, and we're going to put an arrow in and check our knocking point. So for setting up my knocking point, real simple with these XF30s. All I've been doing is with these AE Pro drops, I've been setting them up so that they're basically everything's evened out top to bottom, and that there's a little bit more play than it going flat. So what that usually means, or what that has been meaning, is with a knocked arrow that it'll be just going through the top of the burger buttonholes, and that's about square with the string. If you have a squaring device, you can of course use it. Levels, all that stuff is good. If you want to just eyeball it, that's fine too. That's how I set up all of the bows that I built. Alright, so I'm just going to mark the bottom of my knock with a Sharpie, and that'll be my knocking point. Tying in my knocking points, I've been using Bloodline Fiber boa material. This is .014 serving material. Just holds nice and tight on each other, doesn't come undone. Alright, I'm literally going to just repeat the same exact process. I'm only going to do 2 loops on the top though. So same exact thing. I'm going to leave maybe just 1 serving length of space in between, because again, 30-inch bow, so at full draw, this thing's going to want to pinch that knock if you don't leave just a little space. Alright, so we've got the bow in the draw board, arrow knocked, just for safety's sake. Top cam, just barely touching. Bottom cam, so that is about perfect. Wow. It's almost like somebody forgot to record me tuning the bow, and it was just perfect right out of the press. Okay, so we're going to paper tune. Final 2 things is I'll usually tie in my peep. Nothing special there. I am just keeping it kind of, I don't tie in top and bottom normally, but for these, since they're shipping out to shooters that I haven't seen them shoot personally, I'm going off of measurements. I just have it tied around on the string, so you can just see I use some of the same Bloodline center serving I used for my knock points. This is .014 diameter material on the peep. And then the last thing is just setting up your string stop. So all I do is just loosen up that set screw, and I leave just a hair of space between your string and that string stop, and I just found that gives me kind of the quietest setup. So before shooting, make sure that your rest is down. That's kind of the nice convenient thing about using this Protekt knot. I can just pull it nice and tight with my hands. Rest is down. I'll grab one of these FMGA arrows, make sure there's a point on there, and we'll paper tune this guy. Now I'm expecting this to be pretty close to paper tuned already. One thing I noticed with the PSEs is they don't really like a lot of cam lean. So what I try and do is set up the bows so that the top and bottom cams aren't leaning already. So I've actually already taken out a bit of twists on one side and put them in to the other side, just because from setting these bows up, that's kind of what I found. So this is also only a 50-pound bow shooting a nearly 500 grain arrow, so I'm expecting it'll shoot pretty well through paper regardless, but let's give it a go. I'll show you guys. Second shot through paper. That's pretty good. I'll take that. And let's get this thing to the range, and we'll get a rough, basically the equivalent of a bore sight, ready on these bows, and we'll ship them out to the recipients. Alright guys, last little thing that I think is worth going over, and then we'll sign off, but setting up these spot hog sights and zeroing in. My basic rule of thumb is screws for macro adjustments, so getting the sight within 3 to 6 inches, and then knobs for fine adjustments, so those final those last couple of inches of zeroing in. So I'll usually use, I'll bore sight kind of using my left to right by just lining up my pins with a knocked arrow and my peep, making sure everything is in line. That's my left to right. That'll at least get me on target. And then at 20 yards, I'll zero my elevation within 3 to 6 inches using the screws on the actual turret. And on these 3-pin spot hogs or sights like it, you can use these brackets right here. And then after that, once I'm within 3 to 6 inches, I'll use the dial to fine tune my elevation. There's micro adjust pins for the individual pins on here. And then you have the micro adjust windage on there for your left to right. But guys, that's basically it. So that's my down and dirty setup for these XF30s for these Noden's outdoors recipients. This is actually the last of the bows. I filmed this whole kind of thing in a few different segments and spliced them together, but I'm going to pull my XF30 out of the back of the car. Got a whole bunch of new pieces of gear on there, so that'll be the next video. So if you're not subscribed, make sure you do that, and I'll catch you guys on the next video. See you.